Hi, welcome everyone. Thanks for coming. Hey, it works from this far away. As I was mentioning to them, I'm trying out with my tablet pen to see if it to use as a clicker, which is great, but I have no idea what my range is. So there's a decent chance that at some point during this presentation, I'm going to get very confused when it doesn't move on. Hi, that one. I like animation. Hopefully you all do too. That's generally a good thing when you're coming to an anime convention. I'm not going to take it as a given. I've seen more than a few people who don't. But nonetheless, great. And I work for a university. Specifically, I lecture in computer science, and my university, Brunel, does a lot of AI-based research. Which led me to some thinking about how AI may be impacting the anime industry, which led to this panel, which is not all about AI, but it certainly will touch on AI. The idea here is we're going to talk a little bit about the anime industry, how it runs, how technology's affected and changed the way anime is made in the past, how it is doing that again now, and some of the issues that in some ways are tied into that, the changing of technology across time. I'm not going to be talking about queer topics this year. Sorry if you're looking for the third installment of me doing that. I might do that next year. Hold fire. So if you're here for that side of things, please stay, because I'll feel very sad if everyone leaves. But, you know, next year, maybe, probably, maybe. We'll see. As long as I don't get too scarred by today. But no, so let's start back with, let's start our talk. By the way, I'm just projecting here because I'm holding this and I don't want to hold things in two hands. If you can't hear me, I will use a microphone. If it's a problem for anyone, just let me know. Otherwise, I've got some lungs. I might as well exercise them occasionally.
You're better quality than the mic is.
I'll take that. Take the compliment. But no, so many of you will have gone to the cell painting workshop potentially yesterday or similar. You'll have an idea of how anime used to be made, right? Things were sketched out on paper, transferred to a clear piece of plastic, a cell, which was then painted by hand. That was how anime was made for still most of its life. And a little example of some cell-painted animation for you to consider and potentially compare and contrast. No? Apparently we don't. Let's go back again. Alright, that worked literally yesterday. Oh well, I've got a button. Do I? Do you want to play?
Yeah, this probably boobs and butts last night.
It literally played 10 minutes ago when I was doing setup.
So you have to have the screen in like preview mode so you can see everything down the side, and then it will play. For some reason.
You're one of the only persons who have had this problem.
But isn't... Quick check. That looks like... Isn't that preview mode?
Is it not
No,
is it not
that's,
attached to your PowerPoint?
It definitely is attached to my PowerPoint.
Right, so
Exit
out of your full screen PowerPoint, open
Yep.
your PowerPoint as if you were editing it, and then press play from there.
Drag it to the other screen.
Why are you...
You're gonna have to see your
PowerPoint!
Yeah,
Can you, like, sort your life out, please?
yeah, now it'll play.
There we go.
Even got some sound. Got no full screen though. Full screen from here? I don't know. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Great. Then we're good. We'll work with this. Some of you may be familiar with this show. It's not very well known, but I like to think if you haven't, okay, and no. What I want you to pay a little bit of attention to on here is the black lines around the edges of characters. Particularly look at her hair when we get close-ups, and you'll see things like a slightly ununiform thickness to those black lines. It changes between frames. Right? Things like that are artifacts of the cell-making process. Right? The fact that somebody has hand-drawn that, and not only hand-drawn that, hand-painted that. There are other things that come beyond that. Things like a slight discolouring of things when you have multiple objects on the same screen. Right? You'll see that the whites, for example, on that screen, end up a little bit off kilter, a little bit off colour. Give me a second, I'm just going to, actually I am going to move this back because I do need to have a look at my notes occasionally. So, sorry about that. Might have to flick between these two a couple of times occasionally. Love you all, hope you'll forgive me. But also, I can't use my magic button unless I've got it on present mode. So there we are. But yeah. And now, anime is predominantly produced by being drawn on paper, scanned in, and then digitally coloured. Right? Our clear pieces of plastic have all gone. In the bin. Or in the fire. Literally, in many cases, an awful lot of them were just straight up burned. I would like to have issues with in terms of preservation of things. And in fact, an awful lot of studios deeply regret now that it comes time to, maybe now they come to going, we really would like to release a high-def version of that. Maybe don't burn it then. Maybe you should have thought of that. But no. So now, things are drawn, so things are coloured digitally. And as I know we have more than a few artists in the room, as some of our artists may know, it's a lot easier and a lot better at fixing errors. So, full screen. No, don't full screen. Hi, I'm a computer science lecturer.
It's a modern day equivalent of having an angry hand puppet, isn't it?
It really is this. Okay. We've done that one. No, wait, that's not what I want to do. I need to just go straight on, don't I? Otherwise I end up with the same problem again. I bet you can guess what I'm going to play. Alright. So that sort of gives you an idea of some of the advances that we have seen. And they've been pretty good. And they've had an effect. Broadly, go on. Yeah, I've got to press it twice. Well, they've led us to, we talked about some of those digital effects. I should have learned from this one. I'd forgotten that I've got one more video to go. I'm going to have to do that again. Sorry, everyone. So I've got several more videos. Maybe I should just give up and just run it off the other side. Anyway, some of those digital effects, things like the petals, are hand-drawn carefully and in between. But sometimes you might think, well, it'd be a lot easier if we didn't have to. It'd be a lot easier if we could just model that. Which leads us to the final significant advancement in anime technology that you're all going to be familiar with.
I've got a horrible feeling I know what you're going to show.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to press the full screen button again because I am an idiot. I do apologise for that. I don't know if you will. will, but we'll see.
Okay, I thought you were setting us up for a fall.
ゲームにお住まいの人類の皆さん、私はフロンティアセンター。新たなる可能性へとご案内するために、そちらの仮想空間に介入しています。
アクセスルート追跡。
フロンティアセンターをもとにクラッキングはこれで184回。
So this is a few years old now. This is Spell from Paradise, which is a decent film, and you should probably watch it if you're interested in, if you like giant robots. This is a good one for you.
あと300秒。あらゆる変装の使用を
But watch the,
1週間
again,
以上地上
smoothness
ハイ
of
ガー
the
メッセ
movement.
素晴らしい。勝ちに行かれや。
Head turn before.
全知全能ってわけじゃなく
And a left move.
同時化していない
Things
け
that
ど、
would
原
be
始的に意見が集ま
3
る。
frames in
時
between,
間をつけられ砂漠でながら生きていくなんて真っ平だ。
a full 30 or 60.
人に手をつ。
それが私の存在証明です。
This fluidity of motion
私、
is
まだこの世界をろくに知らない。
inarguable. That's not to say I'm advocating that 3D animation is better than 2D. I think they are distinctly complementary skill sets, personally. Some shows manage to blend the two of them very well. Some shows don't.
So I thought you were going to show something where it really didn't, just as a contrast to the last one.
I did think about that, but I thought actually I'd like to show the advances that we have being effective here, rather than, you know, I don't know, certain series of Berserk, for example, or a few other things that we might want to consider. Genuinely, I'm thinking I might just give up. Just do that. See, it works when I do that. Why does it work when I do that? And advances have led to a change in how anime is produced. Here's a nice table showing the number of TV series, just TV series, disregarding novels. The pen's not going to work any better if I throw it on the floor. That I've learned just then. Disregarding movies, disregarding OVAs, disregarding net animations as well. That's when we stopped using cells. Approximately that period. It was a very fast transition. Which leads us to something of a situation. Let's ignore the pandemic. Let's just pretend that didn't happen. For the purposes of animation right now.
You can see the financial crash as well.
You sure can. It's not wrong. But outside of those things, there's a pretty clear trend and a shocking amount of series that are being produced these days. And no doubt you've noticed it, to some degree, in positive things, right? There are some shows that are getting animated now that you think, wow, that sure is a decision that they've made. Sometimes a really great decision that caters to my niche interests. And sometimes,
It's Mushoku Tensei.
well, I mean, that's not even the worst, right? That's not even the worst.
How do you mean it's worse?
Yeah, no, sometimes it's how not to summon a demon lord.
That's worse.
Or redo of the healer.
Oh!
You know, that we can always, there's always the bottom of the barrel with anime. There's always something we can scrape.
Yeah, and then you can get a drill.
This leads to some questions. How does the anime adapt? How does the industry adapt to producing that many things? Is this sustainable? Can we keep doing it? What's going to keep it going? Will changes in technology mean we look forward to even more shows being produced each year? Is that something we want? I don't know. That one's up to you to have a think about. But in the meantime, you may have noticed that outside of the top tier of shows, there is a clear differential in terms of quality of shows that are coming out at the moment. And I don't just mean in terms of some shows have stories that you're not interested in, right? Which is fair enough, but that's always going to be the case. I mean in terms of there is a clear drop-off in quality. there is a clear drop-off in things. Because a lot of changes have happened in the industry to accommodate this massive stack of shows that are coming out. A lot of things have adapted to this. One of these is much less consistency in staff. I'm going to highlight this with, we used to have a single animation director, someone who would oversee the quality of animation. It would be their job to make sure that when the keyframes came in, they were what was needed. When the in-betweens were done, it matched. Characters were on model, work was done. Now, the number of animation directors we have is huge. I highlight here Yurikuma Arashi, because I said I was not going to focus on queer media, but fuck you, Yurikuma's great. I don't imagine everyone can read Japanese, but this is the credit for the bear animation director, which I would argue is a fairly niche role. But, you know, jokes aside, we used to see a single AD, and now we have multiple ADs, potentially multiple ADs per episode, and not just in niche roles, right? Shows like Hibike Euphonium had an orchestral AD, someone who was who had classical musical training, who could ensure that the concert scenes were portrayed relatively accurately, which is nice and arguably defensible. When you start to get to the point of having 5, 10 or more animation directors working on your series, not in specific niche roles, but just in trying to make sure that your animation is consistent, who's making sure that your animation director's decisions on consistent animation is consistent? And how much extra time does that take? And is that feasible? So, let's see if this one will play. Too good to be true, wasn't it? Too good to be true. We're going to take some leaves out of Shirobako, because I always love to take some leaves out of Shirobako. Watch that as well.
この間教えたじゃん。あれで全部だよ。でもどこかにまだ誰か。あのね、自称原画マンってレベルの人なら。そういう人にオファー出して困るのは誰だ？演出と作家、総作家、監督。違う、自分だ。自分ですか？作打ちを早く終わらせたいばっかりに内容的に微妙な人たちを入れたら、それは必ず演出と作家チェックで止まる。キャラが似てなかったり、構図が変だったり、動きが足りなかったりと直さなきゃならないことがたくさんあるからね。下手すれば一から全直しなんてこともあり得る。だから結局演出と作家に迷惑かけた上にただでさえないスケジュールが押しまくって土壇場のリテイク対応でヒーヒー走り回るのは自分だってこと。
So, I here is tasked with trying to get an episode completed in a less than ideal time frame. Shirobako aired 10 years ago. The time frame that Ari was trying to get her episode completed in, that was considered less than ideal then, is now considered normal. That is the default expectation for getting things turned around, because it turns out that there are a lot of people who call themselves keyframe animators. And perhaps they're not all as good as the people as you would like them to be. And perhaps when there's 240 shows being made at the same time, there's a lot of demand for the good ones. It becomes a challenge. What? I give up. I'm done. Where are there? Animation passes through a huge number of people's hands, and the rush to try and get these things covered means that there is less time for direct training, less time for mentorship within a company, less time to work your way up. Animators now are likely to have many, many more employers, potentially even be completely freelance, which we're going to come back to in a little bit. But we've also had what's known as the web gen waves. So the web gen or web generation was a bunch of animators. That's unfair. A large number of animators who were hired not from art schools or animation schools, but instead based on online portfolios, based on things they've created and uploaded to Pixiv or similar websites. On the one hand, that has left us with some really creative forces in the anime industry. Right? A lot of really creative people have come into that who've done a lot of great things. On the other hand, a lot of those people were brought straight into more senior roles. They were brought straight into keyframe animation because they were damn good at drawing already. They'd showcased that. But that doesn't necessarily mean they had all the training to learn. It doesn't mean necessarily they understood all of what's going on in animation. Specifically, skills around in-betweening and how to plan these things out. How exactly do you expect someone to understand in-between placement and how you can divide up a show, how you can divide up a cut if you've never done it? Realistically, it's a challenge. It's tough. The web gen waves were a while ago now, the first web gen wave, and in fact, the first web gen wave are now ADs in their own right, in their 30s or even 40s. Right? They are not the new up-and-coming folks anymore. They are the mainstays. But they're the mainstays without having risen from the bottom. They're the mainstays without having had that training. And that's caused some issues. I'm going to go back and ask some more questions on Hideaki Kano-san. Who has some things to say to our plucky protagonist? Come on, work for me. No, why? Why would you do that to me? What is up with this?
Not focus the video player when you click.
Press play.
I was just going to say press play. Just press play.
I can try.
I believe in you.
Come on.
No? Alright, I'm here.
Totally highlighted and everything.
Press play over there.
There?
相変わらず
Hey! We've worked it out. Genius.
じゃあこの仕事引き受けていただけるんでしょうか。
ここは馬じゃなくて戦闘機にしているんで全部投げ払う
監督に聞いてみないと。
宮森さん、これをわしが書く意味って何だろう。どうしてわしに頼んできたの？誰でもよかった。い
え、すみません。私考えたら、いえ、考えなくても、すごい失礼なお願いを菅野さんに。
切羽詰まってるのは分かった。
はい。でも菅野さんのことをよく知らずに頼むとか、菅野さんほどの人に。
ほどってことはないよ。けどアニメーターも人間だからこの仕事はお前にしかできないって言われたいんだよね。
はい。
馬の大群に紛れて大脱走って無茶すぎて笑ったけど。
すみません。
今は馬描いたことのあるアニメーターなんかそうそういないだろう。アニメーターは派手なアクションよりもっと動きの基本を学ばねばいかんと思うんだけどな。
馬は社内でも引き受けてくれる人がいなくて。
まあね、この内容じゃな。あれ？自分ムサギだよね。
To be continued. We'll come back to that in a minute. No, we will. But as was highlighted there, a lot of critical techniques from basic animation to other things aren't necessarily being passed on in the ways that they traditionally were. And not just those animations, not just those things about how to draw, how to maintain the company, how to plan out shots and pans, how to make things work. Right? It's really important that we make sure that these skills get passed on, and we don't let people leave the industry without passing on those critical skills. It would be a great thing to do if they hadn't already left the industry years ago. There are some deep questions over if there are even any animators left who can do certain skills. We'll talk about that a little bit. It's not the fault of the WebGen animators. It's not their fault that they weren't trained. And it's not their fault that they were... It's not their fault that they were excellent and creative and pushed into higher roles. But it is somebody's, isn't it? It is somebody who should have stopped us. Somebody who should have said things. And here's where we fall back a little bit into technology and how it's helped a lot by finding us lots more in-betweeners to take part in the industry, which is great. It's very helpful. Most of them live in Indonesia. And I think you will probably find, if you look at your credits, you will see the credits of many anime these days, you will see a lot of names credited that are distinctly not Japanese. They may be credited in Chinese, which may form a challenge for some people to understand, but nonetheless, huge numbers of people now being employed via the internet, located via the internet, sent things over the mail, or even sent work over the internet, and then mailing big brown envelopes back to Japan. Because why would you pay someone in Japan a Japanese minimum wage to draw things? And bear in mind that Japanese minimum wage is pretty garbage. When you could instead pay someone in Indonesia literal pennies and do the same thing. And do you think there's any reason why someone in Indonesia can't be just as good an in-betweener as someone in Japan? No, not at all. Right? There's no racial component to drawing skill. You know, there's no ability, there's nothing that makes Japanese artists particularly better. But if we outsource only our in-betweening to Indonesia, Indonesia is one of my examples. There are many Southeast Asian countries that have similar things going on. Where are those people who are experienced with learning how in-betweening works going? What is their route through? Where is the route to maintain and build upon that knowledge and make use of those skills that come from a decade of drawing in-betweens, or even half a decade? The answer is going nowhere, right? There's the 1 in a million who gets the job of their dreams, gets to be brought over to Japan, moves into keyframe animation, but they are an exception among exceptions, not really worth a discussion, right, compared to the numbers we see. Yeah, I'm going to give up and just walk over this time. Like, we've got a button that might work.
その後 3D レイアウト出力です。
ちょっといい？
どうぞ。
すぐにでも全体会議やりたいんですが、監督が開くのは何時
？19時以降なら何の会議ですか？
最初の進行やばいんだろ？原画もまだ全部負けてないみたいだし、今会議しておかないとそれこそ晩作尽きるぞ。
つきますか？
とりあえず話し合ってみようか。では今俺が言った状況で間違いないですね。
うわー、ムサに最大のピンチ。
絵コンテ見たけど監督これ無理ですわ。作画のカロリー高すぎる。
宮森、馬 3D でやるって線はないの？
下柳さんに聞いてみたんですが、最終話の 3D カットをもう100カット超えてるってことで無理だと。
監督、絵コンテの内容を変えましょう。馬の群れを見せるのならフレームから足を切る。大量に見せるなら横パンで回り込み風に軽くする。何言ってんですか渡辺さん。ここはクライマックスじゃないですか。クライマックスで作画がしょぼくなったら臨場感が全然伝わりませんよ。最終話のクライマックスで逃げるんなら今まで何のためにやってきたんだって話ですよ。なことは分かってるよ。けどな本田、完成しなかったらどうなる？放映できなかったらどうする？ダメです、絶対ダメ。むさに7年ぶりの元請け作品なんですよ。いやでもそれを妥協と諦めで終わらせるなんて。すみません監督、今のうちの力ではこの内容をこのスケジュールで完成させるのは無理です。泣いてください。
待ってください。その後 3D で。
We've done that one. So let's look at where things might change, or are changing. Digital colouring helped us a huge amount, right? It helped the amount of things that could be produced. Maybe a little bit too much. Maybe possibly a little bit much. But nonetheless, it helped. So maybe technology has some of the answers in what we're trying to do. And this has been true. Like this is true. Sunrise's Naohiro Ogata has talked about this. How Sunrise would love to do hand-drawn mecha animation. They really would. But they can't get enough people at the moment with skills to do so. So they're turning to CG. Even in the shows that they don't want to turn to CG in. Right? Original premise of Gundam Unicorn was that it was going to be something that primarily focused on primarily hand-drawn mecha. Narrative? Fair number of 3D cuts in there. Even Unicorn itself had some where things spelled out. So 3D CG helps. It does. You heard Miyamori there mentioning about 3D layout, which is great. 3D layout is a process of creating a wireframe of what a scene will look like, which allows you to easily pose it, create a layout that you can then present to your keyframe animators, who can not draw on top of it, but use it as a very solid reference. And you know that it'll work as a reference because it's been laid out in 3D space. You know that there's realism there, you know that there's depth, you know that you don't have to trust each of your animators to work out the perspective off the top of their head. They've got it right there in front of them. And again, artists in the room will know how incredibly helpful that is. You can work out perspective off the top of your head. It's absolutely doable. But do you trust that every person will do it exactly the same? No. Do you trust that the same person will do it exactly the same in two scenes? Also probably no. And that's good. That's given us a huge boon in terms of getting keyframes drawn. And more recently, studios have been looking to AI as a route that they can try and get some things produced. Take some of that workload off of animators, they would like to say. So,
Until the guy has 3 arms anyway.
we're not going to watch all of this, but ignore Netflix putting their branding over everything. This was Studio Wit. Netflix love to shit their branding all over everything. It was a Netflix original. No, it wasn't. They had nothing to do with it. They just have the distribution rights outside Japan. That's incidentally true for literally everything that you think is a Netflix original. So this was a Studio Wit production, which Netflix funded part of. You can probably tell the audio is digitally generated. Shocking no one. Storyboarding was done by hand, but the background layout, backgrounds in particular, were AI generated and then modified and blown up. So, I mean, you can see some interesting AI issues, like the fact that that mountain is hollow. Not like there's a crater in it, it's hollow. It's just the outside of a mountain. Right? Ask the AI. What's that?
It looked completely different.
It also looks completely different there. So, thus highlighting some of the issues we get with relying on these technologies. Of course, there are... I'm going to say right now, the focus on this panel is not on expounding on moral issues with AI. There are a lot of those. I'm not a big fan of a lot of scraping people's work without permission, for example, and a bunch of other things. But we're going to focus on this bit in AI. We're going to focus more on the impact it has. What you've seen, and this slowly coming to an end, is a 4-minute piece of animation. On the one hand, we can already pick out several questionable things about it. Where were they watching those fireworks over? Because the city was all the way over there through a giant tunnel and in the background when we saw him get on the train. So where was the city that got bombed?
Yes.
Anyone? I've got no answer. Right? Why was the mountain hollow? Who knows?
Magic mountain.
Right? Why, in fact, are they watching fireworks with a nuclear cooling tower behind them? That's not the prettiest place that I would choose to watch fireworks. No judgment. Maybe you're really into nuclear cooling towers and fireworks. Maybe that's that town's thing. But no, there were some questionable things there that come from trusting an AI to build these things. Some of that is fixable, arguably, with more training and more work. But what it does do is highlight the fact that can this make things easier? Potentially. Can it make things just differently hard? Also not impossible. Okay. So, generally, perception here has been bad. Generally, people have not been particularly welcome of this as an innovation. Some of that is going to be the same thing. There were a number of people who were not particularly welcome of digital colouring as an innovation. But there will always be people whom are not interested in seeing things change. And that's... But some of it is very real. And the same discussions that are going on in the West over the use of AI in artistic areas are going on in Japan. I have a a little recording to show you that's not anime for once.
人工知能で動きを学習させた CG を見せてくれるそうです。
これ踊ってるように見えますけど、でこれはこれ頭を使って移動してるんですけど、基本通貨とかないし、頭が大事とかってないんじゃないですか。だから頭をもう普通の足のように使って移動してるっていう。この動きがとにかく気持ち悪いので、ゾンビゲームの動きに使えるんじゃないかっていう。こういう人工知能を使うと、多分人間が想像できない気持ち悪い動きができるんじゃないか。
毎朝この頃会わないけど、身体障害の友人がいるんですよ。そのハイタッチするんだけど大変なんですよ。彼の筋肉がこわばってる手と僕の手でこうハイタッチするんです。でその彼のことを思い出してね、僕はこれ面白いと思って見ることできないんですよ。これを作る人たちは痛みとかそういうものについてね、何も考えないでやってるでしょ。極めて不愉快ですよね。そんなに気持ち悪いものをやってるなら勝手にやってればいいだけで、僕はこれを自分たちの仕事をつなげたいとは全然思いません。極めて何か生命に対するそれは分かってます。そう言わない見ててどうこうってそういうのじゃないです。それは本当によく分かってるつもりですけど、どこでたどり着きたいですか。人間が書くのと同じように作りたいね。はい。人間の方が自信がなくなってする。
I just want to imagine for a second presenting your work to Miyazaki, of all people in the world, and he says that to you.
I thought he held himself back quite well.
I
Must have felt like that nuclear explosion earlier.
right, like, I just give up right then and there. Just resign. You are done. Your job is over. Yeah, what's
Can I
up?
interject and say, to be fair, this is the same gentleman who had repeatedly said he was retiring only to come out of retirement.
Yeah.
That is true. That is true. But equally,
How can you retire after seeing that?
He's not going to let that happen.
I mean, to be fair, if you're going to show AI animation of movements for zombie animation to Miyazaki, that's not really the audience you're going to get a good reaction from.
I mean, possibly. But I don't think they necessarily expected that bad a reaction either. You know, there's levels and levels, and I think this is an insult to life itself. It's pretty strong. It's pretty up there in terms of reactions you could have. But yes, so yeah, what's up?
I also feel like there's a non-zero chance they didn't plan to make zombie animations when they started this project. But at some point realized they can't get human movement.
That is very true. That meeting was a few years ago, and it must be noted that AI animation has come on quite a long way since then. It's not just zombies that move by leaning on their heads. However, you know, I don't think Miyazaki's points were entirely based upon the fact that he didn't like the zombies. I feel like that comes through quite strongly. But yeah, moral discussions on AI training are very much alive within Japan. And fans are not happy. There has been a large drama on Pixiv. For those who don't know, Pixiv is the main website where Japanese artists build their portfolios and upload art to. I say build their portfolios because the main website that Japanese artists upload their art to is probably Twitter. But, you know, if they want a lasting portfolio of art, Pixiv is the place that's there. Pixiv had a long-standing history, a long-standing system where if you were a free user of Pixiv, you are able to mute a tag and you're able to search for one specific thing. And they've never changed this in their history. They've now changed this so you can mute one specific tag and also AI generation. Because fans were deeply, deeply angry about the amount of AI generated art that was being uploaded to Pixiv and how it was choking out their ability to see genuine new art that had been created. On the other hand, some studio heads have been more keen on this. Production IG and WIT, which are broadly kind of mostly fundamentally the same studio. Mapper, to a lesser degree Trigger, have been interested in this. You'll note those are the studios that are, you'll note those studios if you follow what studios are like. Those are the studios that very much were and are seen as the, I don't know, bolder, more, studios that are more willing to go for something. They are, if anything, studios that epitomize the sort of Silicon Valley move fast and break things attitude towards creation, except in animation style. Yes?
I'm pretty sure most of what I've been hearing about Mappa over the recent 5 years is mostly that it's like the worst place to work at in the entire country.
Yes, Mappa also has some severe issues with how it's handling its employees, which is a little bit out of scope for our panel today, but is definitely true. I'm really sad because Studio Wit is making the 4th season of Ascendance of a Bookworm. So, rip me. Hopefully they're not going to animate that. Hopefully I'm going to stop throwing my pen on the floor again. But we'll see. Maybe one of those things will come true. Maybe 2 of them. I'd like 2 of them actually. Can I have 2 of them? I really don't want to keep throwing this pen on the floor. So what's going to happen? How might this play out? How much time have I got left to talk about that? Oh, actually, I've got a decent amount of time left to talk about this. Great, we're doing fine. I might even finish early for once, and then Pete won't shout at me. Which is lovely. I don't mind Pete shouting at me that much, but it's nice when he doesn't.
Shouting from last year.
Yes, okay. Last year I may have told Pete to fuck off while I was in the middle of the panel. That was possibly, it was intended jokingly, and I apologise to anyone who took that seriously. Pete and I are actually friends. I'm not genuinely angry at him. Build on that one. So, Sunrise we talked about before. Sunrise ran a mecha drawing school from 2005 to 2011 because they couldn't find enough people who could draw robots. Take a second. Sunrise make Gundam. Arguably, within the top few franchises to exist in anime. If Sunrise cannot find people who can draw giant robots, just imagine what anyone else who would like that to happen is dealing with. Because if you can draw giant robots and you have an option, you're going to work for Sunrise. You wouldn't not. And Kyoto Animation, who have, as always, we love Kyoto Animation. We stand Kyoto Animation for doing insane things in the anime industry, like running training schools and paying their staff. I mean, actually, just that is enough to set them apart. So Kyoto Animation continued to push for effective training. they're a bit on their own. They're doing their own thing. They always have done. Hopefully it will continue to pay off for them. There we go, yeah. But in specific, Kyoto Animation's Ishihara. Needed to remind myself what my story was here. Ishihara is a huge fan of train animation. It's his hobby. He loves drawing and animating trains. He has said that he is the only person in the studio who does this, or who can do this. Which means that whenever Kyoto Animation has a train scene, you know exactly who drew it. Right? I promise you, you do. Because that's the only person. But he, in a long Twitter thread, discussed this and how he feels that there's a very real chance that making those animations look right may be something that within the next 10, 15 years is something that there is no one in Japan who knows how to do. Right? He does it because it's his hobby. But if he didn't have that hobby, who would they be relying on? Another question.
I feel like the problem here is based on the description of the man that whenever Kyoto Animation has a train scene, he's the one who says, I want to animate that.
But why would you give the train scene to someone other than someone who knows how to draw train scenes? If anyone can make sure there's training going on for this, it is Kyoto Animation. But we'll see where it goes. But let's catch up with our friends at Musashi Animation. See how
ムサになら描ける人がいるとおっしゃっていました。
あれ、自分ムサニだよね。
はい。
いるじゃん、ムサニなら、あの人。
あの人？
オタクの杉江茂さん。
確かに在籍してますが、今メインのお仕事は他社のニャンとワン太郎で、あれは子供向けでリアルな動物じゃないような。
杉江さんは基本があるから描けるんだよ。見たことない茶髪のアンとかサンバの冒険とかアンデスチャッキー。
あります、チャッキー、一番大好きなアニメです。
もしかして知らない？チャッキーのオープニング一人で全部描いたのが杉江さん。しかもチャッキーが山道を駆け下りて転んでまた走り出すのを俯瞰から回り込みでワンカット。最後に森中の動物が山を駆け下り草原を埋め尽くして走る。その全てをたった3日、杉江3日伝説。
ムサになら。
Why is it late twice? We'll work that out again at some point. But yes, Mizuya, who is a very well-known keyframe animator, with a few titles there that you might have heard of. They're not known for fluid animation or anything. Those particular titles I've picked out. Top notch. Please, if you like watching, if you like good animation, please watch those. Okay, at least watch some of the fight scenes from Attack on Titan and Kizumonogatari. Princess Principles, maybe just personal love, but that's fine.
Watch it anyway, so we finally get the movies.
Please, can they hurry up and get the movies out? But yes, Aga, again, semi-famously within the Japanese animation community, had a rant on Twitter, which he ended with, animators are no longer a collective of people who can draw. After being told that someone couldn't draw the layout frames for a show without the 3D animation layout being provided to them. The skills that help us, but tools that help us, and sometimes things get lost. I think it's up for debate how big a problem that is. If 3D animation layouts are an industry standard tool, then not being able to draw layout frames to a professional standard isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world. But I think it does serve to highlight those skills that we lose, those things that we move past, and how advances in technology, as much as they can help make workflows easier, can lead to a loss of skills. Did we miss that this was going to happen? Yeah.
There is one similar situation with the first season of Adventure Time, and we know that Adventure Time art style is very simplistic.
Yep.
Is anyone aware of the episode where the Ice King dresses and disguises as a horse? The horse is terribly drawn.
Okay, sure.
Because nobody in the studio knew how to draw a horse.
Literally, I've been just showing you clips about that. Perfect example. 10 out of 10. Thank you for being here. But genuinely, great example of literally the story that we're going through happening in real life. And it doesn't surprise me at all. Right? Animating a horse is not easy. It doesn't move like a human being does. Like, the way the muscles are isn't in the same place. Even if you get down on all fours and start trying to move, you're not going to do it the same. Right? That's not how, like, it doesn't work like that. Yeah.
Yeah, like, horses are notoriously bad to actually say. It's like, it wasn't until like 1960 we even knew how they ran, because we couldn't actually. We always thought they were running with both legs at the same time and not the canter that they do.
Yeah.
It wasn't until they had the slides and.
Which is absolutely fair, and showcases that if we only learned this skill in the 60s, how are we losing it now? It's not been that long. I mean, it has been quite a long time since the 60s, okay. I wasn't born then. Sorry to the people who were. Hope you have your ibuprofen and had a nap before coming.
But there's an entire YouTube videos of people who know animation who go through horses in animation and rate them by quality of realism. And it's like there's 3 decent ones in existence. Nobody can draw a horse.
Yep. Absolutely. I believe it. So, what might the future look like? Where might we end up? Well, AI animation is a damn sight easier and cheaper to make happen than animating by hand. That's undeniable, right? You can't raise that question. It's more expensive than you think because GPUs are really pricey. Don't know if anyone's tried to buy a GPU recently. Not quite as bad as they were during the pandemic and the crypto boom, but pretty expensive. But nonetheless, a lot cheaper than, hiring a person. People are still quite expensive. Even Indonesian people are quite expensive. So, we'll meet Sugie-san. See where things are going, or I'll lose my mouse pointer. There we go, got it.
さて、木下君のコンテを拝見しました。例えばこの馬の俯瞰、僕の考えですが、このカットは半日かかります。こっち、馬の背中を次々に移動する3人、これは8時間かな。なんでわかるんだろう。経験からかな。16カット、全部上げるとなると1週間かかるね。9時から終電まで1日フルに働いたとしてもそんな時間はないよね。だけどラフ弦でよければ時間が短縮できる。
別の人にクリーンアップを任せるということですか？
うん。ただ僕のラフは原画に慣れてない若い人には線が引えないかもしれない。
問題ありません。第二原画、私がやります。
小笠原さんが
私もやります。
ムサビの第一線が逃げるって。
杉江さんの動物原画ならぜひ勉強させていただきます。
小笠原君と井口君なら安心だ。
俺もやらせてもらっていいですか？僕も手伝わせてください。
やりたいです。私も。
ありがとう。助かるよ。
はい。
みんなで頑張ろう。
はい。
残り16カット。さて、
AI models require constant new layout. They require constant new input. And without that, they will continue to chew up input from other AI models, which turns into an absolute mess. And we've already seen, through examples, through the videos, through the fictional example that I've played through for you and through the real examples that we've talked about, we've seen that skills atrophy. We've seen that people's ability to do things goes away if people don't do it. And to take another example from that, after just 3 years, 2 to 3 years of lack of air travel from the pandemic, it was almost impossible to hire airline-capable pilots.
Wow.
Because experience goes away, skills fade. And in that case, when you've got several hundred people's lives riding on your skills, turns out we need them to keep polished to a very high level. Because I don't want to fly in an airliner piloted by someone who hasn't flown a plane for 3 years. Maybe you do, I don't know, maybe you live dangerously. But I'd quite like to get to my holiday destination. But no, we stand at a point where there is a very real risk of a lot of skills in terms of drawing, in terms of creating in the anime industry being lost. And if that happens, we can look forward to we can look forward to a drop in quality, right? We can look forward to a drop in quality as that feedback loop loses the input it needs to keep going, right? AI generation is not, and never will be, a perpetual motion machine that keeps making new things with no input. It requires people's hands. It requires the hands of thousands and thousands of skilled artists and animators pushing to keep that machine going. And again, this is setting aside the moral argument over the fact that we really need to ask those artists if they're okay to keep pushing, and if they're cool with that. Even setting that aside and focusing purely on the technicalities, we should not set that aside. That's a really important issue. But things will get, like skills will be lost. And let's fast forward in our minds 20 years, right? To a world where we've embraced a lot of AI animation, where there's a lot more is being produced by machine. Right? We give it the guidelines, we give it the ideas, and we see what comes out. And maybe we tune it. Maybe we redraw little bits and we fix it up and we do that. But without that input, the quality of things will decrease. And I don't mean that you'll suddenly see people with 3 arms, right? It's very funny. Don't get me wrong, it is very funny. But I'm not talking about that kind of immediate, obvious thing. I'm talking about just a general decrease in quality, right? Generally less expressive or more weird-looking facial animations, for example. Things that drop into uncanny valley more easily, right? And a general sense that fades through people that things just aren't as good as they used to be, right? You're not seeing the outstanding, like those standout pieces that used to come out aren't. Those really cool scenes that used to hit you don't. It could be getting old, but also it could well be those machines, like the repeating of things. And so studios turn back and look to do some more hand animation, right? They look to bring these things back in. But in 20 years' time, the people who currently have those skills that we are afraid of losing, they're retired or dead, right? The web gen, whom already haven't been trained, the successive web gen waves that already haven't been trained in in-betweening and how to divide up animation work, will be the most senior people there. And if they've not been trained by now, I don't think somebody's going to come in and train them in the lowest level end of jobs when they're looking towards the highest end of responsibility and production. Right? And maybe they will. Let's finish our story here.
週1くらいで使わせてもらっていいかな。
いいと思いますけど。
みんなから作画のワークショップみたいなの開いてくれって言われてね。
いいと思います。すぐ調整します。
人数が決まってからでいいよ。それよりありがとう宮森さん。宮森さんが仕事を振ってくれなければ僕はムサミのお荷物で終わるところだった。
お荷物だなんてとんでもないです。
今風の絵が描けないだなんて言って孤高の職人を気取ってたんだね。自分にもまだやれることがあるんだと分かってとても嬉しいんだよ。ありがとう。
そんな、こちらこそ助けていただいてありがとうございました。私チャッキーが好きで好きで、幼稚園の時は大きくなったらヤマハリネズミみたいにサボテンを食べたいとか言って本当に食べてお腹壊して。それくらい好きでしたです。
宮森さんがアンデスチャッキーを見て笑顔になってくれたのならこんな嬉しいことはないよ。
And things worked out okay for Musashi Animation there. Spoilers. Spoilers. They got the episode out in time. If you liked that, that's not the finale, by the way. There's more. You should watch Shirobako. It's really good.
It's not available to stream, I don't think, anywhere.
No,
but it's
right next door, it's available on Blu-ray. Yeah, they've got it on the table.
Oh, right,
go buy
okay.
it from Keith.
I thought it was imminent.
Yeah. So there you go. But no, the divides that it talks about there, right? The lines between the people feeling like they are the old guard, like they can't keep up with the new technologies, and the skills they have aren't necessarily relevant anymore. That's real. Those feelings are real. And Sugie-san's not made up from whole cloth. People like that exist within anime studios. And they have those skills. But they won't exist within anime studios forever. And unless there's a real effort made in the face of the new technologies that are coming out to maintain and preserve these skills, then I need to go on to that one next. We're not quite done yet. Unless there's a real attempt made to maintain and preserve those skills, we won't. We will end up in a place where these skills have atrophied, these skills have gone, right? Skills in animation, skills in production, skills in many, many areas of the industry. And it is likely that in the face of a lot of this, we are going to see a contraction in the anime industry in the next few years. Right? Not least because, and this is a slight tangent, Japan's recently introduced a new law on new laws governing freelancing, which gives greater protection to freelancers, which is broadly a really good thing, but it's making things a lot more expensive. And if studios really want to keep up those 200, 250 or even more shows coming out each year, we're going to need to think about how that can be done sustainably. How that can be done in a way that produces, that allows things to continue for the long term. Otherwise, we're going to see a lot fewer shows produced each year, or a lot lower quality of shows produced each year, as studios determined to keep their numbers up start to rely even more on those technologies. Yeah?
Probably going to get the same thing happening as in the American movie studios, where they only go for really generic, super safe stuff that's going to be as popular as possible with as many people as possible, because it's the only way to afford making them.
You're 100% right. So, who wants to see some more isekai shows starring a teenager who has slightly spiky hair and is considered a loser?
No. The generic is now just smooth black hair and black eyes.
What's that?
The smooth black hair and black eyes. That's the standard now.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah. So,
It's going to be got by the end of the show.
you know, but there, you know, what we might see in an attempt to maintain profits is a lean towards the safe, lean towards the things that they know will sell, the things that they know they can make. And as much as I'll criticise the sheer number of shows that are coming out these days, right? There's a lot of shows that I love that would not have been made without a decent size, without a lot of production going on, right? There's a lot of niche, interesting shows that can only exist as long as things are being made, as long as there's a decent number of shows that are coming out, and as long as there's a decent belief in profitability. I might just have to suck that up. I might just have to deal with that. Or maybe there's a route through. Either way, I wanted to end on saying, don't blame the animators for this, right? Don't blame the people who are drawing and the people who are making this. And if my slight downer predictions are come true, and we do see a drop in quality, it's not the fault of the animators. And no matter how much anyone might like to tell you, it's not because they're being greedy and wanting more money. They would quite like to be paid a wage that you can live on, which is kind of nice, because I should note, an awful lot of studios have taken to running apartment complexes which they rent to their animators, because the amount of money that is paid to animators is not enough to afford general rent in Tokyo. Which is suboptimal. Like, I feel like the world should probably have moved past, you know, next slide is the final one, Pete. that was politer than last year? We're better now? Okay, good. Yeah. You know, I feel like we should have moved past company housing at this point in time. You know, I feel like we should have moved past that in the Victorian era, let alone now. So yeah, is there a way to integrate technology? Yes. We saw that when with the phasing out of cells. We've seen that with 3D layout design, right? And are there ways to integrate newer technologies, like potentially, in some ways, AI generation? I would argue yes. There are ways to do ethically trained, in-house modeling to support existing artists, to support the work that people do. Not to replace it. Because as soon as you replace it, you are losing those skills, and those are skills that it's taken literal generations for the industry to build up. Those are skills that have been, before now, passed through training regimens, through mentoring, from the things that people learned making Astro Boy, right down to the studios that are making things today. And that's what we stand to lose. So, I don't have much time to answer and take any questions. In fact, I have approximately 1 minute. But if anyone has anything they'd like to say, now's a great time to say it. Otherwise, thank you very much for being here. Was that a hand coming up? Yeah, go for it.
Just wondering, obviously CG in anime predates them going to Digipaint. How did they make that work?
That is a good question, and one that I don't personally have the answer to technically. Like, I would love to know. I might do some research on that one for something to talk about in future, because that is a really interesting question, and I don't know the answer.
Because there was CG and I think some TV anime very early in the 80s, but they were stealing it from the film they made beforehand.
Making CG, even low-quality 80s CG, was phenomenally expensive back
They
then.
had to buy it from the Americans.
Macross Plus was one of the most expensive things made at the time because
I'm
of
talking,
CG.
I'm talking about Lensman.
Yeah. How was that integrated? I don't know. I would love to, and actually I should do some research and find
If you
out.
want to be morbidly curious, try and watch the Lensman film. It's 80s film but has CG in it. It's not very good, but they have CG in it.
I'm curious! Chuck, you can...
Yeah, remind me, I'll send you the Lensman.
Sort me out on that one?
Yeah.
Love it. I'll give that a check. All right. Anything else? Yes. One more at the back.
Are you going to hold the panel in 20 years' time and told you so?
Am I going to hold the panel in 20 years' time and see where we're at? No, I'm going to forget, is the honest answer. Even if I tell you I will not remember in 20 years. Maybe remind me. We're going to get kicked out now because Masquerade is, well, they're tearing the wall down as I speak.